Hey, what's up, guys? So, today, I'm going to show you what I've changed with my Plume Monarch build. I'm running these skills, and if you want to know the logic behind it, basically Blitz Assault, Disarm, and Shroom Shield, and Clone Strike are all going to make us live a little longer. Blitz Assault's going to do constant damage, but give us damage immunity. Disarm is going to give us that ability to just basically stun, and then we're going to use the Shroom Shield and the Clone Strike to kind of delay and give us that life. Worldly Snare is going to give us the crit rate we need in this build. And as far as the pals are concerned, we're using Treasure Dragon, Righteous Banana, Bird, and then we're using the Chicken Hood. And then we'll have the Hydra Sprite so we can proc more and more and more. The reasoning behind that, if you don't already have Hydra Sprite, the best optional piece would be the Octopus. I don't have it yet, but I would absolutely swap this piece for Hydra Sprite. I would easily jump all over getting Octopus in that slot instead. I would not even think twice. Okay, but main reasoning behind this and what makes this build works the way it does is I happen to have the magic carpet mount, and you need to proc 6 skills in order to get a full energy to random skills. And what we're ultimately aiming to achieve here is to either proc Worldly Snare more times, Shroom Shield more times, or Clone Strike more times. We'll be unfortunate if we hit a Disarm, but that's not bad, and if we hit a Blitz, it's not bad. That's part of the reason why all of these skills kind of work together in the way that they're being used. Because they're ultimately going to give us the more time that we need to live longer and therefore do better. As far as the back accessory goes, I am currently running the Celestial Surprise for a 11-second AoE bleed. This is great in PvE, but if you're going to go for a more PvP-centric piece, you really probably should be either aiming for getting the Emerald Embrace, where you can increase your combo damage up to 60 times at 0.5, which is basically like saying getting extra 30% combo damage, or you need to be getting things that are going to ultimately improve the pace at which you're going to get either crit damage or combo damage. Those are the only two things that really matter in a Plume Monarch build that I'm currently running. Okay, as far as the sets go, I'm currently running Bonded Mask. And Metamorphic Crystal is kind of an open question mark. I'm just kind of trying to find a piece here. Ultimately, the idea behind this is that you're trying to find something that is ultimately going to improve the amount of damage that your current pals are doing. So this slot, if you can ever get the Octopus, then this will work fine. Okay, but if you don't have the Octopus, it's kind of a useless slot. You don't have anything for it. I run the Thundercaller Kite, the Flame Book, the Storm Necklace, and then I run the Stellar Statue because we want to live our Worldly Snare longer, in part because the Worldly Snare skill, okay, the only thing that matters in the skill here is that for every 1% of crit rate, we gain an additional 3% crit damage. The effect lasts for 5 seconds. So by increasing the duration of this skill, we're basically increasing the rate of which our crit rate can go up. And one of the things that I'm kind of currently running low on in this build is actually crit rate. I have a lot of combo already at 66%. If the higher your combo rate is, the better. But if you can get a skill that increases your crit rate, then you're ultimately leveling both your combo and your crit rate, which is the idea. Because you want to be able to get a lot of combo damage, but you're going to put almost all of that damage into your prayer statue. So all your combo damage is going to be in the combo multiplier. But if you can also put that in tandem with your crit damage, then you're also going to get that crit. And that's what makes this work really well. It's because instead of having just one stat that we're working all on, we're going to have 2 stats that we can play on. And that is what makes it work so well in our favor. And that's why a lot of archer builds are really, really great in PvE. PvP, it's a little bit more of a struggle because you're going to find that your counter to that is going to be the Warbringer, who basically every time you combo, every time you send a single crit, you're hoping your crit does enough damage to knock out a Warbringer, because the Warbringer is going to counter every time, and he's going to be able to pop you out. And that's the problem with a Warbringer. The only answer to a Warbringer these days is a mage class player. That is, your Dark Lords and your Prophets are going to be the counter to that player. They're really the only ones that can really put up a fight against that. But they work great against the Warbringers, not so great against archers, and so it's oftentimes a gamble between the two. And that's why a lot of the time Warbringers are usually the PvP centric best player slot, and the PvE centric slot is always going to be the your your archers. You know, it's not to say that you don't see mage class players find themselves in a good spot. I think, honestly, the best mage class that I ever played, that I did with my Holy Guide, was a combination of using a stupid amount of stun and a lot of combo. I think you could also just make it, you know, an easy much case that, you know, again, and this is a true constant of any mage classes, they have a stupid amount of skill crit, and so basically they're popping up as much skill damage as they can, but the second stat that they choose is either going to have to be crit or combo. And I've found it was really nice to use combo because that makes it like pop off. But honestly, I almost wonder if you could find somebody do a mage class that does counter and skill crit, and then they just become a complete walking storm because they get the best of both worlds. They get the best at a Warbringer type builds in PvP because they can counter the archer players, but then they can also do the skill crit damage that then also puts the counter to the Warbringer builds out there. So in a way, they almost kind of find themselves in between. That is kind of the sweet spot if you want my 2 cents. That said, regardless of what build you do, the main thing is you need to know your attributes. If you don't know what your attributes are, the main thing you need to pay attention to is just go to the attribute details, hit the eye, and this is going to tell you what your attributes are and what attributes you're going to want to focus on. Obviously, if you're wanting to do more PvE-centric things, you're going to ultimately increase your boss damage, you're going to increase the amount of damage that you're doing in combo, and then you can either try to make yourself live longer with stun or, you know, shields. There's many different ways to approach this, but they're ultimately all aiming on the one thing that matters. 2 stats is what they focus on, and the rest is history. That's ultimately any build that you've ever seen in Legend of Mushroom, or ultimately aiming on that. There's not a whole lot of in between, and obviously every class is going to have certain benefits that they gain from. Like the Warbringer class is easily going to get a ton of counter damage. This Martial Sage is going to have a ton of crit res, which is great if you're using something like Draconic Resonance, which is going to rate based on the amount of crit res you have and the amount of HP you have. Those are going to be, you know, factor bonuses that you're going to use to your advantage. But that said, you know, I kind of give you a slam dunk of different things to think about, but these are all things that are really, really, really helpful if you're actually trying to build different type of classes in the game. Ultimately, if you want to learn more about Legend of Mushroom and you want to know more about specific builds and things, I have a Discord. Make sure to check that out in the description. And then obviously, if you're trying to save some money too, you can get 5% of your money back, so make sure to check that out. And there is also a $300-ish cash giveaway that's going on. So if you're already spending, you might as well go ahead and get involved in that. I've got links for those down in the description below. That said, if you're wondering, like, questions like, you know, hey, should I awaken or should I be focusing on these fusion souls here? Okay, in my opinion, get awaken first, then do your fusions. And again, if you're wondering how do I do my fusions, what do I do to get those, all you need to be doing is going to your crossover ranked matches, get your extra 5 ranked matches every day, and basically you need to save your tokens so that you can get Red Soul Selection 2s. Any opportunity that you can get Red Soul Selection 2, you need to go all ham in on, because these are really hard to get. I mean, in my opinion, they are arguably worse than getting the Awakening Crystals. You can get Awakening Crystals a lot easier than you can Red Soul Selection 2s. They're a lot harder to come by, because simply being they're more the late game pieces of the game. That is part of the reason why I make that emphasis. And so some people kind of struggle, like they're like, well, should I do this or should I do that? And Awakening, yes, is good. You're going to find a lot of massive benefits as far as Awakening goes. If you decide to do the fusion side of this route, the only problem you're going to have really with going heavy on the fusion element of it is that by not ranking into the Awakening class, you're going to have some advantages against the people that haven't got it, you know, because Fusion Souls are obviously a hell of a lot better. And frankly, the people that have like a level 22 Fusion Soul are probably going to walk all over it, most players. I mean, the amount of gain that you get out of a Fusion Soul is literally night and day, in part because of all the stats that they provide. But it's getting there that is a really, really tricky part, you know, and what fusion souls you get is going to be dependent on what type of class you're playing, you know, like if you're going to go Wildlife Piercer, for example, you know, the one thing that you have to gain from this is basic attack and skill damage. That's super helpful on mage class players, and, you know, basic attack is generally good for any class. So Wildlife Piercer is kind of a no-brainer. You know, if you look at something like the Blade Duo, that's going to be stupid great in any PvE-centric player, so anybody that's running Archer is going to jump all over Blade Duo. Okay, but excellent companion's great for anybody that's going the Warbringer route and the Martial Sage route, but more so the Warbringer. The Eye of Abyss is going to be your crit damage and your skill crit. So this is going to be more your mage players, your archer players. There's not going to be as many Warbringer players that run crit. You'll have some, but not as many. Your Guardian Star is going to be crit res and PAL crit rate. Guardian Star is a little different from all the other ones because you don't see a whole lot of builds that actually focus on the PALs. It's kind of a question mark. I really don't know if there's something to gain with the Guardian Star or not, but it's just worth mentioning. The Blood Stained Blade is going to give you overall global attack and healing rate, and that is, honest to God, that is what his Prophet builds are going to jump all over, and the Plume Monarch builds. Okay, because they use healing rate to basically get a stupid amount of stats. You can check the back accessories to kind of figure out what I'm talking about, but healing rate is one of those rates that it increases the likelihood that you're going to get health back for every hit you do. So if you have a really high healing rate, and let's say you get a 50% healing rate for every attack you do, you're basically getting health back every time. That makes you a hell of a big tank, and it's, somebody that has a bunch of Blindstained, the Blindstained Blade is going to be huge. I think for anybody that's going PvP or PvE, that's across the board. If I had to choose out of all the fusions that I could get, Bloodstained Blade, if I could stack a bunch of Bloodstained Blades, I would. Because if you had at least 3 of these, it'd be overpowered. Okay? Global Defense and Forgiving Horns is really only for the Martial Sage builds. I don't think anybody's going to find that that's all that terribly helpful. And Immortal Spirit, again, this is health regen and HP. Martial Sages are going to use this. Anybody that's trying to use their HP as an attack stat are going to use this. So 100 slashes. You're going to have more builds that are maybe more lenient towards being more of a tank. There's not going to be very many people that use Immortal Spirit other than the Martial Sage route. Or like on the Prophet side, you might have a lot of that. But that's kind of a synopsis of the fusions as far as I understand them. But ultimately, I hope that kind of gives you an idea of what to focus on as far as fusions go and different pieces in the game. Hopefully that was somewhat helpful for you guys, and thank you guys for watching.